Hi, everyone. Welcome to another installment of the Comic Book Club. I am the rare crossover of Green Lantern and Zorro that exists in my fanfic. We are everyone kind of just decided to show up in costumes, and I had to kind of roll with it. So I got Robert Emmett here that exists in my fanfics. We are everyone kind of just decided.
Okay, I'm back.
There we go. We got Robert Emmett here.
Oh, hello.
And the book's upside down.
Yeah.
He is completely blind. It's hilarious. Then we also have Dr. Holocron.
Unlike my grandfather, I like sand.
And joining us for the first time is Philip Kelton. So hello, Philip.
Thanks.
Yeah. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just take this off because I feel silly. I feel silly dressed up like Zorro and Green Lantern at the same time.
Well, now you look like Iron Fist.
Now I look like what? Simon
Well,
Baz?
for a moment,
Yeah, a little bit.
For a moment, you look like Iron Fist.
Okay, whatever works. Anyway, everyone. Oh, my hair is all kinds of fucked. Anyway, everyone, welcome to another installment of the Comic Book Club, where this time we are discussing Sandman, Volume 1, Preludes and Nocturnes. I assume everyone else went and got the absolute edition of Sandman, correct?
Oh, yes, of course. I was going to spend...
I got the $5 version from my local comic book store.
Nice. Fair enough. I love Sandman, so I was really excited this came up as a choice. Dr. Holocron here, who I'm going to tell to take off the Kylo Ren mask because it's muffling his voice. Dr. Holocron here suggested this as a option to vote, and I was like, oh yeah, sure, we can throw that up there, and if people go for it, they go for it. Now you said you hadn't read this before, though.
I hadn't prior, but I've always wanted to because it sounded like it was right up my alley in terms of the kind of horror I like, like the psychological kind of horror that like gets in your head and makes you think and like makes you realize how screwed up the world is and all that stuff. And yeah.
That's interesting. That's really interesting because I wouldn't define it as that kind of horror at all. I when you said, oh, we should talk about this as a horror comic, I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess I could see why you could maybe classify Sandman as horror in some ways. It definitely plays with some of those tropes at least in the first volume. But no, I wouldn't classify it as psychological, so that'll be interesting to get into.
Well, there's definitely a lot of visual stuff that freaks you out, but...
Yeah. Philip Kelton decided to join us because I'd been telling everybody to read Sandman for the longest time, and he'd always been joking with me.
Yeah, I finally give it a read. I got this volume, a friend of mine gave to me as a gift, along with To the Heart of the Storm. And funny, I did read To the Heart of the Storm, but I never got around reading Sandman till now. This is the first time I read this thing.
Nice.
It was really interesting, actually. Very creative.
Mm-hmm. And Robert Emmett, have you ever read Sandman before?
I have not. This is a first time reading it, and I voted for Hellboy. And I'm really glad that this winded up going. We winded up going for this instead because I thought this was just beautiful to look at and to read, and also it made me very sad on several occasions.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. Sandman kind of runs the gambit of emotions. The entire series is just absolutely stunning. Truly is literature in comic book form, in my opinion. And I saw people in the comments when we announced what we were doing here. Someone said, oh, yeah, that first arc is a little rough. They were trying to figure out what they were doing. And so you have like the Justice League showing up and it feels a little awkward. I'm like, no, to me at least, I feel like it feels so natural that the Justice League is there alongside the demons from hell and the mystical creatures of the dreaming and all this other stuff. I'm totally down for the tone of this first arc. Not that it continues that way, but it feels like a natural progression into what the rest of Sandman kind of becomes. So if you like this, I'd say it only gets better and more heartbreaking from here.
I think it's maybe weird for newcomers in the sense that you normally don't. You're normally don't. What I'm trying to say. You're normally not that aware that all these stakes in the DC universe. So the first time you start looking at superheroes, it's like, well, it's like a weird jump. Not for me. I mean, I've been reading this superheroes for a while, and I'm already get used to the idea that there are so many aspects to this universe. Like, there's not only the superheroes, there are the gods, there are the supernatural. Like, it's like a mixed weird of many things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But yeah, sorry.
Oh no, it's grand. Finish your point.
No, but I can see why someone would find it weird, like being a first time reader, like suddenly Martian Manhunter. Suddenly Martian Manhunter is in the book, and and someone that I didn't expect to see in the book was Mr. Miracle, actually.
Right?
Yeah, that was a surprise. I didn't recognize him when I first read the book. I told me, hey, wait a moment, this is Scott Free.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's neat to see how throughout the entire series, honestly, Gaiman wraps these different ideas up, because I don't want to talk about the whole series, but to talk about the whole series for a second, you kind of have this idea in literature of the canon, of the things that feed off of one another. So the first canon thing is Homer with the Odyssey and the Iliad. And then the next step in the canon is the Aeneid, written by Virgil, that's like about the founding of Rome. And then the next step or like skipping several steps, but something else that's in the canon directly tying into these other things is Dante's Inferno, where Dante is being guided through hell by Virgil, who wrote the Aeneid, and the Aeneid takes place as a sequel to the Odyssey, or the Iliad and the Odyssey. And then so you just have all these things that progress upon each other. Shakespeare pays tribute to these things in a number of ways. So you have all these things that are these huge epics of myth of the time kind of building on top of each other. And then Gaiman comes back and does it with Sandman, and it feels so natural to throw the superheroes just in there on the sidelines as just a consequence of the story.
Well, now that you mentioned this, something interesting in the first, I think it's the second chapter. These two characters show up, Abel and Cain, like as in Abel and Cain of the Bible.
Yep.
And it's kind of funny how Neil Gaiman brings like these iconic figures, along like with the Fates, like later in the story.
Yeah, no, it's all over there. It's all very intentionally using these highly literary characters. So Cain and Abel are the first story because they're the first murder, and I find it interesting, and so all that they do is all that they do is Abel is constantly being murdered by Cain left and right. And so he's just like this stuttering mess that lives in fear, and it's super fascinating.
It kind of reminded me of Fables in a way, the way they took those like classic literary characters and brought them literally into like a modern setting almost.
Yeah, definitely, and it just there's a lot of really important lines that kind of establish how this stuff works, because Morpheus straight says, time doesn't pass any quicker for my kind than it does for yours. And in a prison cell, it moved at a snail's pace. So he spent 70 years. It's not like it just was a breeze to him. It was like 70 years in a glass bubble. And it's just really, really fascinating in that regard.
I just find it really kind of funny that in this, we have like a pair of siblings that one is always killing the other. And, like, do you guys know what dropped on Netflix yesterday?
No, what?
The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Oh.
And there's like a running gag where, like, in that version, Zelda just keeps murdering Hilda.
I now have to see that show.
Yeah, the running gag.
That's funny.
I love that. I audibly I do most of my reading on the bus, and I audibly gasped when Mr. Miracle showed up because that's my favorite thing ever. That's my crack, and I was like, "Oh no, it gets better." Like I was like, "Oh my god, Constantine showed up. That's so cool." But then I was like, "Fuck Constantine, Scott Free's in this," and then I was like, "Oh no, wait, it's the '90s Justice League." And do you know what my favorite Justice League run is?
Grant Morrison's.
Only thing I've ever bought an omnibus for. No, Grant Morrison's is the best Justice League run, but that's my favorite.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So yeah, it's really cool to see how that all kind of ties together. I want to go back to the discussion of the horror of this, because as I read it, I definitely saw more of the horror in it, and it does have in that first volume. It's hard for me to remember what volume's what because I read Sandman like this, but in that first volume, it's got the 24-hour diner, which is
Oh my god,
by far the most fucked scary story
that was
I've ever read.
That was like a Black Mirror episode.
For those that are interested, Rasco and I a couple years ago on Geeky Gentleman Horror Month did a fan film review, and someone adapted 24-hour Diner.
Wow.
And it's terrifying.
I've seen they have like an animation sequence in that short film, don't they?
Yep.
I've seen the animation sequence and it looks absolutely stunning. I thought it was from from an actual professional like production. I thought someone did like a DC, like one of those DC shorts or whatever they used to do in their movies.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a professional like animated Sandman short, and it was gorgeous. And then I found out it's actually part of a short film, so I'm actually very interested in giving it a go.
Oh yeah, 24-hour Diner is absolutely terrifying. So that one, I guess I would.
Sorry, I was going to ask: does the adaptation have the scene where they're fucking to the Addams Family theme?
Yes.
Wow.
Yep, it has that.
That's
it has
great.
the scene where the woman admits to committing necrophilia, and it was the best sexual experience she ever had. It's got it all, man. It's super fucked. So it's a really, really interesting watch, and it's an incredibly interesting read. Neil Gaiman even tweeted about it. He was like, "Oh, hey, check this cool fan film out based on 24-hour Diner."
I need to ask something about that chapter. Did these guys actually did all the horrible stuff they were saying, or is it all like a dream?
No, he's making them confess their worst things that they've ever done. He's making them bear their souls out, and so it's just twisted as fuck.
Just for fun.
Yep. He's just
he's
just a monster.
Fine. Can you guys hear me fine? It's just I don't.
Yeah.
I've not used these headphones before, so I'm not sure what the mic is like, and I'm not really seeing the wee green dots show up.
You're talking. There's an occasional little click here and there, but I think it's fine.
Okay.
I think it's just you handling it. It's making.
I think because I'm having to handle it because down here, I think it's. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can barely hear you when it's down there.
Yeah, I have to. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're fine now.
Okay.
So the 24-hour Diner is absolutely terrified, and that one I would say is much more to the psychological bend. The majority of the horror in this is more just like super fucked imagery, like people's faces melting, heads falling off, and that shit. And then just the like scary power of dreams that you wouldn't think of. And Gaiman does a lot of work to show you just how like terrifying Morpheus's power can be. It's unchecked. So you've got like the girl with the sand pouch that Constantine dated, and she's just like falling apart, like literally dying, and the only thing that's keeping her alive is the sand pouch.
Yeah, she gets lost in the dreams.
Mm-hmm.
It's like dreams are like a life support for her.
Yep. But like you get that like full page spread of her, and she's like naked on the bed, but like she's literally decomposing.
Yeah. Yeah. Where is it?
Like that kind of reminds me of
That's some nightmare fuel.
The never-ending story, the second part of the book. Haven't get around to finish it, but the character of Bastian start getting lost in Fantasia.
Interesting. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of horror imagery in here that I don't know, it just seems so natural to me, given that it's part of the canon and that just horror just used to be an element of stories. Now it's been boiled down to being its own thing.
Just the design of John Dee / Dr. Destiny himself, like the way he's drawn is just so freaky looking, you know?
Yeah. Dr. Destiny's look is very creepy. He looks like Jason Borges.
Yeah. No, John Dee is absolutely terrifying. For the longest time, my pitch for a villain for a Justice League movie was fuck Darkseid, fuck Brainiac, Dr. Destiny, because 24-hour Doctor.
It'd probably need an R rating, but...
Yeah. Oh.
Now, I have to ask, was Dr. Destiny always this twisted? Or is it implied that he becomes this because of the time he spent in Arkham?
It's implied heavily that the effects of his defeat at the hands of the Justice League has made him more twisted, because after John Dee was defeated by the Justice League, he was no longer able to dream, much less sleep, and so his mind was kind of boiled inside of his brain, or inside his head. And so he just went crazier and crazier, and so...
Well, I could blame that on being in the same place that Joker lives.
Yeah. And that certainly doesn't help. Arkham is not a place to go to for help. It's a place to go to get worse. And so that's part of the element of just he got worse and then got his power back. And it's just interesting how when he and Morpheus are fighting, like he destroys the ruby, and that just gives Morpheus all of his power that he'd put into the ruby back. And then Morpheus just feels bad for him. Like, you're just a pathetic little madman.
That was
and he takes him back to Arkham, which is probably a thing worse than killing him.
I was honestly not.
No, because he allowed him to dream, doesn't it? Like,
what were you going to say, Rob?
Sorry.
I was not expecting that at all. Whenever Morpheus finally defeated him, I was expecting him to do like sort of a similar thing to what he did to the other guy, the son of the guy who captured him. Does he give him his dreams back at the end? He does, doesn't he?
Yeah, I believe so. I unfortunately did not get the chance to finish all 8 issues, but I remember the last really, really well.
But like, it gives him a good night's sleep.
Yeah, it's really... It's not what you would think in terms of a climax for something like this. When you think of entities that have control over an entire plane of existence, you don't imagine it ends with a whimper, not a bang, kind of thing. And I think like you always just sort of like in superhero comics, you are just accustomed to the big showy climax, but not something like this is just it's so layered and nuanced. It's like getting all of his powers back has given Morpheus like more of a perspective. And
it's kind of his arc. It's interesting to look at this in comparison to the whole series, because this kind of in ways boils down his arc, because the next issue, the final issue of the volume, is The Sound of Her Wings, where we meet Death, top 10 characters in comic books.
Yes.
Yeah, this Sound of the Wings was gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah, and so in that, Morpheus talks about how he had direction, he had, the hero's quest and everything to kind of go on, but then once he was back, he's just back, and he doesn't really know what to do from then on. He's just kind of existing now, and he doesn't have a just revenge or anything yet. He's bored. and yet he's been humbled so greatly by his experience in the world, and so what you really get is the character arc that he has throughout the entire series in miniature here in this first volume. I find really interesting.
To go back to Arkham, sorry.
No. I was gonna mention that. Well, the thing about death in the hero's journey is that it's sort of like a symbolic moment for the character to change. Like he learns something, and he becomes a new person from learning that something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why I think that's the point of that in this story, because she's not really like dead of here's the end of your life. She's more like the end of change, the death of change.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's like a moment of growth for all these persons at the end of the story, or at least that's what I got from it. Like I'm not sure if that's what's the intention. So you were saying about Arkham?
I was just to go back to Arkham for a second. Yeah, there's a lot of awesome appearances from DC characters in this, but the one that probably, and this because I'm a huge Batman fan, but the one that probably made me geek out the most was Scarecrow.
Yeah, that's it's pretty cool that Scarecrow would show up in this, in the sense of Scarecrow is kind of in a sense. Scarecrow is about bringing nightmares into your waking hours and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting to contrast him with in this Dr. Death, who does the same thing.
Dr. Destiny.
Dr. Destiny. Dr. Death.
Although
Dr.
Death
Destiny,
is Destiny.
who does the same thing, but with magic. Basically, they kind of have the same power set.
Yeah. And I just love how he's constantly bragging about how much he knows about fear and like naming all these different phobias that nobody bothers to learn about. Mm-hmm. And like it's almost like he takes pride in how much he knows about it. And like he basically pranks Dr. Destiny by pretending to hang himself, and then he actually hangs someone in another room.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a joke.
Because Doc, you were holding up the back of the book there for a second.
Yeah.
Did anyone think that the artist drew Dream to look almost exactly like Neil Gaiman?
Sam Keith has talked about that. He had never seen a picture of Neil Gaiman or anything until after he'd turned in his initial character designs for Morpheus.
Oh.
I just think it's really, really weird.
And
now I kind of just want
is the older Gaiman's gotten, the more he's starting to look like Morpheus.
Maybe he is Morpheus.
I would not be surprised.
There's me kind of looks like the Crow a little bit.
Yeah.
What would you give for Sting and Neil Gaiman to go to a Comic-Con together as John Constantine and Morpheus?
It's really interesting to look at some of the background and history of the creation of Sandman, because what it was is Neil Gaiman pitched to whoever one of the editors of DC was at the time. It's like, hey, Jack Kirby's Sandman, no one's been doing anything with that. I've got some cool ideas. Can I do something with it? And they're like, well, let's look at the legal stuff and we'll get back to you. And then they get back to him. It's like, we can give you a Sandman book, but you have to create a completely different character. And he's like, okay, I'll just create the best thing ever. that's how Sandman. So like he had no initial plan to do Morpheus, God of Dreams. He had no idea how long he was going to have the series go. It ran for, I believe, exactly 75 issues. And yet it wraps up so perfectly and ties back so much to the original story here, or the original first volume, that you would think it was all planned from the very beginning, and it just wasn't. So it's really cool to, as you read the entire series, to get through stuff, because he starts to seed things in this first volume that doesn't get paid off until the second, third, fourth. Right from the first issue, the Burgess or whatever it is supposed to be,
Burgess.
Burgess, thank you. Cult is trying to capture Death, and then they capture Dream. And they say, well, we didn't capture Death, but who was it? Which one of the endless did we capture? Destiny, Desire, so on and so forth. And ultimately, you meet Dream's entire family. You meet the other endless. You don't only meet Death in the first volume, but throughout the series, you meet Desire, you meet Despair, you meet Delirium, you meet Destruction.
D stands for a lot of things.
Yeah, you meet all of the endless. And so right from the first issue, they've set up the entire family. And then as you go through and like Dream travels to hell and a woman reaches out to him and says, please, my love, forgive me. It's been so long. He's like, it's been 10,000 years. I still love you, but I haven't forgiven you. And like she sees him as a black man. And there's a story later on where you see her story and how she angered Dream and why he condemned her to hell and all this other. It's really, really interesting stuff the more you read into it and see how much legwork is done to set up future stories. I also really like the detail that when people from other cultures see Dream, they see their personification of the god of dreams. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people from like Western backgrounds see Dream as Morpheus, the Greek god, but other people like Martian Manhunter see Dream as a completely different god.
Yeah, that was really, really awesome. The fact that because I didn't know if he was meant to be the god of Dream, but I've also heard someone saying that he is the actual personification of dreaming in physical form. Dreaming doesn't exist without him. So I'm kind of confused as to what exactly that means, because those are two things that are kind of the same, but also kind of not really the same.
What
but
it is
it gets weird when you get to Death, because when you get to Death, you have Necron and you have the Black Racer, and that's a whole deal.
Yeah, no,
I don't they're all the same character, and we just see them as.
This is all really confusing to me in that regard, because there's like 5 deaths in DC canon.
Yeah, no,
there's a lot more than that.
Death I ain't touching with a 10-foot pole because I don't have an answer for that, but I can give you the reasoning, the thinking behind Dream's character design. So if you imagine different pantheons with different gods of dreams, Morpheus is all of those. He just appears differently depending on which pantheon he's appearing in. So when he's in the Greek pantheon, he looks like Morpheus. When he's in the Martian pantheon, he looks like a flaming fucking skull. He changes form depending on who sees him. If you just give me a sec, I gotta go grab a book.
Yes, I remember that he shows up as some alien god to John.
Yeah, I think it's in the 4th issue, I think.
Yeah, do you think that happens the same with Dead? Like maybe the Black Racer and the Dead from these stories are the same?
Yeah.
I don't think so, because I've been reading New Gods recently, and it's like in that the Black Racer is actually as an entity, the powers and knowledge of it get passed from person to person. So currently the Black Racer, at least in what I'm reading in New Gods, is a quadriplegic. Sorry, is a vegetated Vietnam vet. I can't remember his name.
I found it, by the way. Lord Zoral is the god John talks to.
I can't seem to find it right now, but there's a prequel comic that Gaiman did a couple years ago now called Sandman Overture, and it takes place before Morpheus is captured. It ends right before Morpheus is about to be captured at the beginning of this. And there's a chapter where he is meeting with all of the other versions of himself. Hey, Terry. He's having counsel with all the other forms he can take, and he travels with his cat form because he's like a cat god of dreaming too. It's all this weird shit.
Okay.
Hey, Terry.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Oh, thank you for grabbing that.
What is that?
That's the scene where he meets all the different forms of dreaming. Let me put Terry's camera up on so everyone can see it. Yeah. So like all those different entities you're seeing there are the different gods of dream, the different forms of Morpheus.
Cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Can you show the cat one? I really like cat god of dreaming.
Well, of course, it's a cat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like every cat.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, there he is, big in the background and stuff. He's like a battle cat.
Like
That's
a
really
Sarah
cool.
cat, isn't it? I don't know. I just
God Cat versus Dexstar. Who would win?
I'm gonna go with God Cat. Yeah, so the forms of dreaming, it's really weird, but Gaiman wanted to definitively say, no, this is not a god of dream. This is the god of dreams.
Okay.
It all evolves from that.
so maybe the Black Racer is the living personification of death, like some sort of an avatar for the death we see in this story.
See, it's really hard to explain, but no, death in the Endless is the only personification of death, the only true personification of death. The other characters like Necron, Black Racer, all that shit, those are essentially supposed to be pretenders or people who are using power over death.
They're near death.
Are not death themselves.
Or they kind of have like a power over an aspect of death.
Mm-hmm. Like the Black Racer just ensures that no one escapes death.
Okay.
He's not death itself. There's a lot to it. There's a really, really good scene at the beginning of one of the issues later down the series where this guy is walking down the street and he gets crushed by a brick wall that just collapses on him, and then death is there, and he says, "Oh, I did such a good job avoiding you. 450 years I avoided you. I had a good run. I did so well." And Death looks at him and says, "You got what everyone gets, a lifetime." And it doesn't matter to her if your lifetime's 10 seconds or thousands of eons. It all comes back to her at the end. That's really, really interesting. And it's what's talked about in her first issue, where she was there waiting for the first living thing to die, and she'll be there when the universe is ready to end, and then she'll lock the door and be alone. And that's
well, that sucks.
Well, she'll have some Neil Gaiman comics to keep her company.
And Mary Poppins.
So, this bit here with the because you were talking about the guy avoided for you're talking about the guy who avoided her for like 400 years, and like this scene with the baby, she just takes the baby, like the bit where the baby just says, "But is that all? Is that all there was? Is that all I get?" And she just goes, "I'm afraid so."
Mm-hmm.
Like that was.
That's very heartbreaking, especially for the moment.
Yeah.
Like that is the single most emotional scene in the entire Sandman series. In my opinion, nothing impacts me as hard as that, because no matter how many times I read that one page, it always hurts. Just the mother left there with her baby dead in the cot is just so endlessly tragic. And yet it's just part of it.
But what's interesting is that even despite the darker moments, they still managed to get some comedic moments as well. Like, I think this volume does dark humor really well. They have a lot, like right before that happens, you have this whole thing with a comedian who gets electrocuted by the microphone. He's like, "God damn it, I was just about to like make it out and like make it big." And she's like, "Sorry." And like, yeah, it's sad, but it's also kind of funny, you know?
She died on stage. Yeah.
Well, that is funny. Just ask the Joker.
I like the bit where the jock before that she takes Dream with her, her and the guy who's playing soccer, he's like, "Hey, Fox, you like want to get a soda? I can see you again." "Sure, Franklin, you'll see me again soon." And then I was like, "Oh wow,
Yep.
something's gonna happen." And then
And
at
then-
the end, he just gets knocked over, and he doesn't even know.
Yep.
This is like 70. How many 70 something issues? But like when you get to it, like it could have ended here because like it ends. It has a definitive end.
Hmm.
You could end it right there. Dream has accomplished his thing, and he's had his sort of like mini character arc after Sound of Wings. It could have ended there, and this book would probably still be a masterpiece.
Oh,
Just on
it certainly is, and that's the thing is, as good as this first volume is, it only gets better. It only gets more impressive.
Don't tell me it gets better, because like that's for to fill. Like also those for Lucifer looking like David Bowie.
Well, of course.
If I get to hell, I'm going to be okay with hell as long as like Lucifer looks like David Bowie. That should be cool.
I love the scene in hell where like they think they've tricked him because they've surrounded him by the hordes of hell, and they're like, "Well, you've got your helmet back, but you don't have any power here. What makes you think we'll just let you leave?" Is like, dreams have no power in hell. What would hell be if people could not dream of heaven? And then they just let him walk.
Well, shit.
Up. No one can answer anything. It's like a fucking mic drop, and he's just gone.
Like,
sorry.
I love that.
Really interesting about that scene, though, is it, like a lot of Gaiman's work and like a lot of the Sandman, it's seated perfectly just a few pages beforehand when he's playing the game with the demon. Because the demon's of this opinion that power and strength can overcome anything. And Morpheus, like, so the demon's like, "Oh, I am the end of universes. I am the destruction of everything. What are you? What can you possibly be that can compare with that?" And Morpheus is just like, "I am hope.
I am hope."
Yeah. And it's just, what do you say to that? How do you defeat hope?
Because and the thing is, in any other book, that moment might have come off as a bit cheesy, but I think Neil Gaiman pulls it off really well. Like, oh, hope can be anything. Yeah, we've seen that before, but here I think it has a lot of significance because this book just gives you so much horrific shit to look at. And like, it gets so dark and so depressing. And to have that moment is just really cathartic, you know.
I think it's also a testament to the artist of how the artist visually communicates the "oh fuck" moment of him saying "I am hope," because before that they were sort of like creating constructs of what they were describing. Like the challenge, I'm assuming like challenge is like because it is just sort of like, "Oh, I am this thing that can beat your thing." Oh no, I'm this like. It's kind of like a very creative equivalent of
Big Fish,
two
Little
kids
Fish
in the schoolyard being like, "Well, I can do this and I can do this."
Yes,
it's a very creative equivalent of that. So
we should try playing this game sometime.
Whenever the bondage demon guy, and I'm only calling him that because he shows up dressed in high heels and garter belts and stuff. So whenever the two-mouthed demon dude is like, "I am the end of everything," yada, it takes the form of an explosion. But in contrast to whenever Morpheus responds, he's just like, "I'm hope."
Yep.
You know, it's like, it's so nonchalant, it's so casual. He's like, I don't even need to make a big spectacle about this. You're done, son. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's
also interesting because hope is formless then, isn't it? It's literally anything. It's not visually presented. It's just explained.
Terry, what did you think
self-explanatory,
of the book overall?
Yeah, so just quickly, I'll say I absolutely love most of Neil Gaiman's stuff. And I think the first thing I read was American Gods. So I read some books before I read his comics. And yeah, and I kind of absolutely love Sandman as well. And it kind of sets up everything I love about almost fiction in general. but especially all of the magic, dark side of the DC universe as well. Rereading the first volume, I didn't realize how much I didn't realize all of that stuff was in this. I didn't realize the Mr. Miracle cameo, Martian Manhunter cameo, Constantine. I didn't realize all of that was in the very first volume, and it's pretty amazing that it sets up uh, pretty much everything and death as well. I thought that was in a later volume, and not that I'm saying it's the perfect book, but for me it kind of is perfect because it touches on so many things. I do just want to show. I don't know if you've read Books of Magic, but you were just talking about death and how she at the end she said at the end of the universe she's going to show up and be the one to lock it up. And in Books of Magic, Neil Gaiman actually did that scene where it's the end of the universe and death is literally there, ready to I guess close up shop on the whole universe. So I like how he ties everything into quite a lot of his stuff. And I just started reading Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, and this seems like it's a good kind of sequel to that because Etrigan showed up, and
Yes.
And what was the other? Oh yeah, and Constantine, obviously. And I guess some Justice League stuff, and it just tied everything together again, and it was just like blowing my mind. It's just, I just love it so much. I only caught like the last few minutes of the discussion, but I feel like you've probably touched on everything. Yeah, so I'm just here to say that I love Neil Gaiman and DC and all the magic stuff, and yeah, and it's a great horror book. Yeah, for the season.
Yeah. I do absolutely adore this book. I can talk about Sandman for days, and if you did like this, yes, keep reading the whole series. It only gets better, I promise. It only gets more tragic. It only gets more interesting. The Shakespeare issues, there are 3 issues with William Shakespeare himself. Each of them is absolutely stunning. The first Shakespeare issue won the some short story award for that year, and it was so good that they decided, okay, comic books can't win anymore. They decided to change the rules to specifically bar
bullshit.
Yeah, they specifically decided to change the rules to bar comic books because they're like, well, then we don't want comic books being talked about, but we can't say this isn't genius.
Like, I never
And then
got
Morpheus.
I never got, after a certain point, I never understood people denying comic books as being literature, as having literary worth. I feel like after, like, it's a cliche to say, but it's a cliche because it's kind of true. Like, Watchmen kind of broke ground on that, and then you had people like Grant Morrison and Neil Gaiman who just sort of built on top of that momentum, and they legitimately created work that, if it was in prose format, would have won every award. It's looked down on because it has pictures.
Yeah. It's totally.
Sorry. I just wanted to gush about the art for a second because the art, I think, throughout this is like fantastic, and I think there's so many creative panels and so many great moments with just the framing and like how certain things are shown. But the sequence that really just blew me away was this one.
Where he tries to draw like a Kirby style.
Yeah, and you see Scott-free and everything.
Yeah, because like it's kind of like Kirby in the sense that it's more blocky than the artist's regular stuff. Is it the same artist? Yeah.
I believe it's Sam Keith all throughout the first volume. If I'm not mistaken, it's Sam Keith throughout the entire first volume.
It is. It looks like he's trying to like merge his style and Kirby's together, and it does. It was very jarring at first. It was very jarring at first, but then afterwards, I when I realized what was going on, because at first I didn't know what it was, I was like, what's going on here? Oh, it's Mr. Miracle. Oh, he's trying to do Kirby. Oh, he's not trying to do Kirby. He's merging his work and Kirby's work, and he's creating like an entire sort of like hybrid art art form, which is in and of itself, like, that's Kirby shading on those eyes there.
Mhm.
Like,
I figured it out as soon as I saw like Granny
gorgeous.
Goodness's face. I was like, oh, he's doing this. Wow.
And then, like, it's actually more apparent when you can actually see the two styles on the same panel together, when you see young Scott Free with Morpheus. And just, I love that sort of...
Can I get that
It's
panel as a
over kind
poster?
I want it too. I want it so much. No, I want this one of just like Morpheus on Scott's bed. And I was kind of annoyed whenever I was reading this, because when I was reading this and he was talking to Scott, the things he was saying to Scott, it was like a light bulb clicked in my head, and I went, I think I know how Tom King's going to end his Mr. Miracle run now. I think Neil Gaiman just made me spoil it for myself in my brain. And I don't know how I feel about that. I hope I'm wrong, but I hope I'm right. But I hope I'm wrong, but I really want it to be right.
I stick to my theory that
I
they
won't
are
say
generic.
anything, of course, but ooh, damn you, Neil Gaiman.
What was that, Philip?
No, I stick to my theory that the Mr. Miracle story is that Scott is trapped in some sort of matrix or something like that.
Okay. Well, I don't want to talk too much about Mr. Miracle. Maybe on a future episode.
No, that will get its own video,
Yeah.
I hope.
And if I could just mention one more thing about the art, the second to final issue where John Dee and Morpheus are quote unquote fighting, and like he finally managed to destroy them, and then you just get this beautiful, beautiful full page spread of him just alone in like a void, and like you get that and he's just talking to himself. Like that page spread actually made me gasp a little. Honestly, it was just like whoa, like it just grabs your attention, you know, like he's just all alone.
Isn't it meant to be that they were in the world of Dream anyway? And so with Morpheus gone, there is nothing there anyway. So like, as long as so if he is the personification of dreaming, as long as something is alive to have imagination, he exists.
No, what it is he's on Morpheus's hand.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Or I did not pick up on. I thought I didn't notice. Okay, I wasn't looking at it properly the right way.
It's okay. It's okay. Morpheus is a very white guy.
Yeah.
But it's still an amazing image. You know?
Oh no, it is. It's meant to be this profound thing. Like, oh no, did he break the dreaming? What just happened? And then you just realize you realize the scale of, like Morpheus says, I've never been this powerful in eons. I forgot what it was like. And you just like, oh God, John Dee is totally fucked. And then it takes that really interesting and profound turn because, of course, it does because it's Neil Gaiman. I do want to talk about the art because I love Sam Keith's art. I think Sam Keith is one of the most visually talented and unique artists who have ever worked in comics. But I hate Sam Keith's taste because Sam Keith hates death. Sam Keith did his own comic called The Max, I believe is what it happens in. And one of the issues opens up with basically what is a drawing of death. And the narration says, death is not some cute goth chick. Death is scary. And then it's like turns into the Grim Reaper or some shit. It's like, oh, that's so dumb. How did you miss the brilliance of making death a cute goth chick?
No, I get his point. Like,
it's
like
he was trying to be ironic.
No, it's like seeing death from the eyes of the mother. Like the mother that lost his children. She doesn't know that there's something else after that. She doesn't know that that is chained. For us, the mortals, that is just the end of everything.
I think if you read some Sam Keith work, you would realize you're being way too generous to Sam Keith.
Oh, maybe.
Sam Keith is one of those guys who's an incredibly talented artist but cannot write to save his life.
Could it be like? Could the purpose behind death being? Could the purpose behind death being a goth chick simply be more to do with the fact that death is within this a very neutral thing? It's just it's just a thing that is a necessity of life. And so they juxtapose that by dressing all in black, which on paper could be scary, is like, oh, they all dress in black. They must be part of some gang or whatever. These youngins today. But she's very sweet and very bubbly. And so, like, it's like the hard image of the goth chick juxtaposed with a very bubbly, very sort of sweet, very kind persona.
Well, that's the thing that's the most subversive about Gaiman's death is she's so nurturing. She's such a nice person. The last story in my Absolute Edition is of Death meeting a woman who was given the same powers as Metamorpho and the same physical deformity, and just comforting her because this was a hugely traumatic experience for her. That she hates her powers. She wants to die, but she can't because she's the forces of the elements. And so Death is there just comforting her. And the woman's so pleased that Death is there because that means it's finally over. And it's just the most, it's so subversive. It takes a look at Death as a release, as a comfort from the more torturous elements of life. And that's what makes Death such a wonderfully unique and fascinating character in Gaiman's work.
Another thing I wanted to bring up was how often he has like radios in the background that are like playing different songs that oddly like fit the mood and like themes of the story. I think my favorite one was "Sweet Dreams Are Made of This" by Eurythmics.
I was really
looking through the books.
I was really tempted to anytime a song came up on the radio, I was really tempted to like stick it onto YouTube and play it in the background while I read, but I was too damn lazy.
Yeah.
I was too sucked into the book, okay? I'll say that. I wasn't lazy. I was too sucked into the book. There we go.
The only song that I wish they'd included that they didn't was "Don't Fear the Reaper." I wish they'd used that for the final one.
Yeah, that's great. That would be good.
If there's a personification of death, is there a personification of life?
No, she represents life. This is something I wasn't sure if you spoke about, but all of the 7 siblings, they represent their opposites as well. I think it was something I read or something I listened to, or it might have been in the series. I can't remember, but somewhere they talk about this. They represent both. So Death she represents life as well. I don't know how someone explained it better than me. But
is it something
that Death is a part of life? And, yeah.
Would it be part of the fact of because one is the antithesis of the other, one is part of the other, therefore cannot exist without the other, so it makes sense that they would just be the same thing. It is like the two sides on the coin are not separate things, they are different aspects of the one thing.
Okay, that is an explanation I've not heard before, because I was tempted to say that life would probably be the mother of the endless eternity. And because they in Sandman Overture, they show you the parents. They show you eternity, the mother, and time, the father.
They're more like space and time, though. That's how I interpret them.
Yeah, that's fair. I definitely agree that it makes more sense that death is the personification of life as well in terms of the endless.
Like it's fascinating when you think about it. I mean, you could probably write literary theses on this one volume for an entire, like, I don't know, for an entire course or an entire thing or whatever.
No, it's definitely interesting.
Still not even think that you've scratched the surface of it, like in terms of literature, in terms of philosophy, in terms of even just in regards to different pantheons. You could probably study it in some sort of theological classes and stuff like that. And it's such a versatile book in terms of what it covers that it really should be on like reading lists for numerous university courses.
Mm-hmm. It should.
Yes.
And yeah, it probably is for some. The ones that actually will acknowledge the importance of graphic literature.
See,
The funny
I-
books.
I had the sort of mixed fortune of having a course where 3 of my 5 main lecturers really understood the importance of the graphic novel as a medium. One of my lecturers was actually did actually write Italian comics. He was Italian. And he wrote comics in Italy, and he was like, they all like really sort of like, we all got into like really cool conversations and stuff like that over beer, just about comics and like Grant Morrison and Neil Gaiman and all that stuff. And then we were just like, oh yeah, I would love to have this or that or whatever on a reading list, just because we had to study aspects of philosophy in a drama degree. We had to like, so I would love to put this on the syllabus, but I can't, like, and so it was kind of a wee bit sad because I was like, I would love to for like a class have to read, I don't know, Watchmen, or Sandman, like, or whatever.
Yeah, there's some good stuff in it. It's a very deep look at like I said, the canon of literature. It's all there. It's intentionally setting itself up to be a logical extension of all that, and so that's really cool. I think what else I want to make sure we talk about with this.
I have something to say that, like, so before I forget this, I don't know if your issues of the volume have the same thing, but at the end of each chapter, there's a picture of an egg that evolves with each with the end of each chapter. Like,
you mean the gargoyle?
Give me a moment. There's this thing over here, that as the story progresses, it keeps evolving, and I have no idea what it represents, but it
looks cool.
Well, yeah, but does it has a meaning? Because I think it's like
technically
kind of represent life and death.
Technically, it's part of the story. I mean, like, the comic hasn't ended. It's there on the page at the end. It's part of the story. It must mean something. By definition, it must mean something.
I don't know. I just
cannot think about it.
So that's weird.
Okay, maybe it's just something for this version then. So in which case, maybe it's not part of the original story.
Wait, hold on. I noticed something. The last page is Sandman, so maybe it's Sandman, like getting out of the egg, because he start taking like a form here, and like
maybe that's showing us how he was born.
And after it comes back, like.
I don't know, guys. Why don't we all have a hour-long discussion about the egg?
Sorry.
I'm game
first. Bam.
Like, no, I mean, it's now that you mention it, it's like, yeah, what is that? What's that about? I have no idea. Is it just for this issue? Is it in the other copies? Like,
no.
And now I'm just like, what the heck even does it mean? Because it can't just be a bit of decoration. It's gotta like mean something, and it's going to drive me mad.
Covers. It could definitely be just a bit of decoration.
Maybe Keith was just like, I'll just put something cool here.
Yeah, that's
okay.
That's Dave McKean. He's very free forming with what he'll do in a comic. Like, oh, they didn't really specify to do this, but fuck it.
I'm gonna do it.
I'm gonna do it. I'm Dave. If it is, it might be Sam Keith's. I'm not sure. I'm
gonna I don't know. Maybe next time I read this, I'll actually have a look, because maybe maybe if you look at them all like beside each other, you could probably work out what it is. But God damn it, Philip, you've given me something to obsess over, and
Well, sorry, I was obsessed with it.
I wanted to finish Sabrina tonight. Okay, now I'm gonna be like, was it me? Was it me? I'm gonna be like Charlie Day in that one episode of It's Always Sunny. I'm gonna have a big billboard with string everywhere, and I'll just be all like, it means something. I'm probably gonna take a pair of scissors to this and like have it all cut out and
maybe
look like it's a beautiful mind or something.
Maybe as Ian said, maybe just like the artist playing with the. Maybe it doesn't mean anything.
I'm gonna wake up in the middle of the night and just be all like, "What the fuck was the deal with that egg?"
You're gonna be like the guy in the first issue. Just keep waking up and you're still gonna be dreaming of the egg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it surprises me how damn long that first issue feels.
No lie. I legitimately did not get a solid night's sleep for the first 3 nights after I started reading this.
Yeah?
I don't know why. I just could not sleep. I got like maybe 5 hours sleep across 3 days.
I mean, I've spent nights just up thinking about Sandman and how good it is and all the connections. And I'm like up at 3 a.m. and I'm like, fucking Sandman, god damn it.
Maybe that's Morpheus telling you, stop reading my stuff.
Oh.
I remember I was on holiday.
What was it, Terry?
Okay, I was just gonna say I had like a weird experience with Neil Gaiman in my life, because when I found out that I shared the same birthday as him, I started to go really I started to go like really like not superstitious, but I was going like really crazy, and so I was like really getting into his stuff, looking into a lot of things I could read about him, listening to loads of interviews, and then I was just trying to like digest as much Neil Gaiman content as I could, and I don't know, I feel like I've got some sort of like weird connection to his work now. So yeah, I'm really into Neil Gaiman.
I share a birthday with Hugh Jackman, and I used to always tweet on our birthday, "Happy birthday to us, Hugh." And I'm pretty sure that if he ever saw one, he'd probably think I was some sort of weirdo. He must have. I stopped doing it. I only did it like 2 years. I did it like two separate years, and it was all like, it wasn't exactly like that. It was something like, "Oh, happy birthday, yada yada. Hope you have a good one. I'm having a good one too." I was like, "Please retweet me. Don't just be senpai." And then I stopped doing it after like 2 attempts because I was like, "This is really weird." Also, I can't take the rejection.
I can't take.
I'm already going through enough nervous breakdowns at university. I can't handle this anymore. What was I going to say? I had a weird sort of like another one of those like jump up in the middle of the night, couldn't sleep moments. When I was like on holiday with my cousin, and we were like we were sharing a hotel room at the time, and I just in the middle of the night sat bolt upright screaming, and I was just like, like as I just read Watchmen. And then and my cousin was like, "What is it?" And I was like, "The panels represent how he sees time."
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Cousin was just,
I know that feeling.
And my cousin was just like, the next morning, he's like, "What the fuck were you doing last night?" I was like, "What?" And I was like, "You sat up and started screaming, 'The panels represent time,' and you kept saying it in your sleep over and over again." And I was like, "Oh wow!" Apparently,
that's funny. I've been there. That moment of realization of something that makes you feel intelligent.
Yeah.
Oh man. Alrighty. Well, once we devolve into this level of silliness, I think we're about done talking Sandman. This is a good episode of Comic Book Club, guys. Sorry I was a few minutes late on this one. Hope people will join us next time. If you enjoyed watching the Comic Book Club, please keep in mind you can join the Comic Book Club every single month. We do one review every month, and all you need is a legal copy of the book.
You make it so hard.
No,
an
no.
internet
What if
connection, and a pair of
hypothetically?
headphones.
What if hypothetically? What if hypothetically I borrowed? Like by borrowed, I mean I traded. Like I gave my friend a graphic novel, and then I took this from his collection, but I forgot to tell him that we were trading books.
That's okay, I guess. More, I just don't want people to pirate the book and come on here.
No,
and
I'm
talk.
joking. I'm joking. I bought my own copy. But I came very close to actually just borrowing my friend's.
Well, okay, all right. So, nah, never mind. It's not worth it. Anyway, so yes, you can join the comic book club. All you need is a legal copy of the book that we're discussing, a microphone, and a pair of headphones, and of course, an internet connection. We broadcast one episode every month. We do a voting video to discuss what book we'll be talking about, and I post the link to join about 10 to 15 minutes before the episode goes live, except this time. So just hope to see more people there. I really like the turnout we got tonight. Thank you guys for reading this and joining. I had a great time discussing it. All right. Until next time, bye.
Tell us in the